flash the Candlekeeper's cursesara clutch the brass candelabra tighter, as another thunderclap shook the ancient stone walls of Ravenshollow Manor. The job posting had seemed too good to be true, caretaker, for a remote estate. Generous pay, minimal duties. Now, 3 days into her stay, she understood why the position had remained vacant for so long. The manor's previous caretaker had vanished without explanation, leaving behind only scattered notes about keeping the candles burning and never let the shadows grow too long. Sarah had dismissed these as the ramblings of an eccentric old man. But tonight, as darkness pressed against the windows like living things, those warnings echoed in her mind. She'd been exploring the manor's labyrinthine corridors when the power failed. The emergency generator had sputtered to life briefly before dying with a mechanical wheeze, plunging her into absolute darkness. Fumbling through the shadows, she'd found the ornate candelabra in what appeared to be a study. Its 3 white candles already lit, though she couldn't remember lighting them. The flames danced hypnotically, casting writhing shadows that seemed to move independently of their source. Sarah backed against the heavy wooden door, her heart hammering as she surveyed the room. Portraits lined the walls, their subjects' eyes following her movement with unnatural intensity. A lantern glowed eerily blue on a shelf, though she was certain it hadn't been there moments before. Just old house settling, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm's fury. But even as she spoke, she heard it a soft scratching sound, like fingernails dragging across stone. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the walls themselves. Sarah's breath misted in the suddenly frigid air, as frost began forming on the window panes. The candle flames flickered, threatening to extinguish, and with growing horror, she realized the shadows were indeed moving, creeping closer with each wavering of the light. From the corner of her eye, she glimpsed something impossible thin, gnarled fingers emerging from the darkness near the door frame, reaching toward her with deliberate, predatory intent. The scratching grew louder, joined by a low, inhuman whisper that seemed to speak her name. Sarah, Sarah, let the darkness in. She pressed herself harder against the door. The candelabra held before her like a shield. The flames burned brighter, and the reaching shadows recoiled with what sounded like frustrated hisses. Understanding flooded through her. The candles weren't just providing light. They were her only protection against whatever dwelt in Ravenshallow's shadows. The whispers multiplied, becoming a chorus of voices speaking in languages she didn't recognize. The portraits on the walls began to change, their painted subjects aging rapidly, flesh rotting away, until only skeletal grins remained. The blue lantern pulsed like a heartbeat, its light revealing glimpses of movement in every dark corner. A memory surfaced from the previous caretaker's notes. The Ravenshollow family made a pact centuries ago. They offered their bloodline to feed the shadows in exchange for wealth and power. But the price was eternal servitude to the darkness. Sarah's mind reeled as pieces fell into place. The generous salary, the remote location, the succession of missing caretakers. They weren't hired to maintain the manor. They were brought here to feed whatever ancient evil lurked within its walls. The shadows pressed closer, and she could make out shapes within them, twisted human forms, their faces contorted in eternal agony. Former caretakers, she realized with mounting dread, trapped forever in the darkness they'd been meant to appease. The candle flames began to sputter, wax dripping faster, as if time itself was accelerating around her. She had to move, had to find a way out before the light failed completely. But the moment she stepped away from the door, skeletal hands burst through the wood behind her, clawing at the air where she'd stood, racing through the corridor, candelabra held high. Sarah navigated by memory toward the manor's main entrance. The shadows gave chase, flowing along the walls like liquid midnight, always kept at bay by the precious circle of candlelight. Behind her, she could hear the door splintering as whatever dwelt in the darkness broke through. The front hall loomed ahead, but her heart sank as she saw the heavy oak doors. They were sealed shut, bound with iron chains that glowed with the same eerie blue light as the lantern. Ancient symbols were carved into the wood, a binding spell, she realized, designed to keep the shadows contained within the manor. But it also meant she was trapped. The candles were burning lower, their protective light diminishing with each passing second. Sarah's mind raced through the caretaker's notes, searching for any mention of escape. Then she remembered the cellar, the old root cellar, that connected to natural caves beneath the manor. It had been mentioned as a storage area, but perhaps, descending the narrow stone steps, she felt the temperature drop even further. The shadows here were older, deeper, fed by centuries of dark rituals. But they also felt different, less focused, more primal, as if the binding that held them upstairs had weakened and their intelligence down here, dot at the cellar's far end. She found it a narrow passage carved into the living rock, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Fresh air flowed from within, carrying the scent of freedom. But as she approached, the shadows surged forward in a final desperate assault. The candles flickered once, twice, then one flame died. Sarah's protective circle shrank, and icy fingers brushed her shoulder. She'd dove into the passage just as the second candle guttered out, crawling frantically through the suffocating darkness as inhuman screams of rage echoed behind her. The final candle held, its light a tiny beacon guiding her through the natural tunnel. Behind her, the screams faded, unable to follow beyond the manor's cursed boundaries. After what felt like hours, she emerged onto a hillside overlooking Ravenshollow Manor, watching as unnatural lights flickered in its windows. Sarah never reported what happened that night. who would believe her? Instead, she simply disappeared, leaving behind her belongings and the job that had nearly cost her soul. But sometimes, on stormy nights, she still wakes with the smell of melting wax in her nostrils and the echo of whispers calling her name. The manor still stands, waiting for its next caretaker, its next offering to the hungry shadows that dwell within. And somewhere in the darkness, the portraits smile their skeletal grins, patient as only the damned can be. The candles in the window burn eternal, a warning to those wise enough to heed it. Some houses are meant to remain empty, some doors should never be opened, and some shadows are best left undisturbed.